what would be most useful for you in our conversation today?
I would really like to go over LR, ways to kind of break it down where I can get a consistent result. I think my main thing is like not being consistent. Like one test, I can probably get like 5 wrong, maybe 8 wrong. So it's just not consistent where I can go confident to test day. And secondly, maybe how to go over the PTs.
Sure,
Like,
sure. Okay, so logical reasoning, score fluctuations. First off, score fluctuations are totally normal. I've never seen a student whose scores didn't fluctuate. And fluctuations can happen for a variety of reasons. It can either be variations in the difficulty level of the questions, or it can be your own mindset or energy level, what you're bringing in that day. If you're doing it late at night versus in the morning when you're fresh, those things can all have an impact. So, do you have a sense of where it might stem from?
so I noticed that I always get like 1 through 12 correct for the most part. So the concern comes when I get to a harder question, which are typically 12 and on, like depending, not every question, but mostly that's where the harder ones start. So that's where I start, tripping over the questions. So maybe it's the how hard the question is or how convoluted the words are, the sentences are.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense that you would get the more difficult ones wrong. Logical reasoning is in a general order of difficulty. As things move on, it gets harder. And so you might want to flag a few questions to come back to later to avoid getting bogged down. Do you ever find that you get bogged down in a question and it kind of stays with you even after you've already moved on?
Like if I didn't understand it really well.
Yeah, if you felt stuck on it for some reason or didn't thoroughly get it.
Yeah, and after I search for an explanation, I get that, that moment of realization. However, it's just doing it on my own to the point where I don't have to always rely on an explanation. I did want to mention I watched your video and they've helped a lot because I noticed my main issue was really understanding the stimulus more than focusing on finding the right answer.
Right. Exactly. You got to slow down and take the time to thoroughly understand the argument before you go on to the choices, because the choices only make sense in the context of the argument itself.
I guess my next question for LR is I know you've talked a lot about patterns and recognizing patterns, so a lot of repetition, and how eventually that clicked, and I think it's like, how do I find those patterns, like just by doing a lot of PTs?
Well, it's doing the exams, but not just doing exam after exam. I call this the obsessive practice exam narrative. The idea that you just do more and more exams, measure your results, and look for some hidden pattern in what you're doing that will magically unlock everything. I'd
Mhm.
rather you instead slow down and take the time to thoroughly analyze the exams you're already doing. I'd rather that you do half the exams or a third of the exams, but review them in more depth to figure out specifically which mistakes you're falling for so you can avoid making them again. And so that's where part of this pattern recognition comes in. You can look at which specific question types are giving you trouble, and you can look at which specific types of answer choices are giving you trouble. I recommend what I call the Socratic review method, where you analyze what was tempting about the wrong answer that made you pick it and what ultimately makes it wrong, and what's discouraging about the right answer that pushes you away from it, and what ultimately makes it correct. And you can also look for patterns in the method of reasoning in the stimulus. What are the different ways they increase the difficulty level of a question that specifically give you trouble? It could be words like unless, except, until, or without. It could be putting the conclusion in the middle. It could be the topic being unfamiliar or unappealing to you. There are a variety of things, and you got to figure out what uniquely is giving you trouble. How does all of this strike you?
I definitely never thought about looking the pattern to stimulus, like looking for the words that have, kind of tricked me to pick the wrong answer or kind of just confused me. So that's a good way to go about it. I've never thought about that, so I'll definitely try it. As far as like going through the PTs, I know that some people do a blind review, so they go through the whole, practice test, and then they just, circle the ones that they've gotten wrong and try to do them again without looking for the answer. Is that something you suggest?
Yeah, I think it could be a great tool in your arsenal of strategies to analyze. I just wouldn't want you to spend too much time on that, because if you're redoing every section that you complete, that could take a lot of time and lead to burnout. So don't feel obligated to do it all the time. Only do it to the extent that it's really useful for you and you're gaining something out of it.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I just mainly, I think reviewing the practice tests is what I'm kind of like struggling with, because finding a good analysis and just like taking actually something from that, not just moving on. Because I think in the past couple of months, I've just been doing the PTs and not really analyzing them right. So I feel like I've gotten progressively better, but not to a point where I should by now. Just because I haven't been reviewed correctly, because I haven't really, had that much help reviewing them.
Yeah. I actually taught a class recently on LSAT question review strategies.
Okay.
It's on the YouTube channel, so definitely take a look at that. And I also want to ask you something else, which is, do you ever keep a mistake journal or a running list of the questions that have given you trouble?
I did. And I put a date to go back to them and try them again. But sometimes, like, I feel that memory kind of kicks in and I remember the right answer. You know what I mean? Because I feel like once you've done a question, of course, you're not going to remember all of them, but maybe there's a chance you're going to remember. So that's why I'm always like, dubious of the fact whether that's effective or not.
Yeah, of course. It's possible for you to remember it. And so that might taint your results a little bit. But let's say the 20 most difficult questions you've ever encountered that gave you trouble, if you were to redo all 20 of them 2 weeks later or a month later, would you get all of them right?
Probably not a month later, I think because I just do them like a couple of days after. So maybe I should give myself more time before trying them again.
Yeah, maybe give yourself more time and of course use a totally fresh copy of them, but really look to see, even if you're getting it right, are you getting it right for the right reason? Or are you just getting lucky? Or are you getting it right for the wrong reason? And that's where, of course, talking out with a coach or a tutor or a study buddy or looking online at explanations could be useful to help you check your reasoning against others.
Okay. Perfect. I guess one more question is, I read your post about your tutoring experience and how when you just didn't really find it helpful and you just went on from that. Kind of like, if I could hear a little more how you did, end your relationship with your tutor and just started progressing by yourself.
Well, I mean, after that session, I was like, I'm just not going to work with him again. So I said, you know what, I'm good. Thank you. And I went back to self-study and I engaged in this detailed review process that I've described to you. And of course, it wasn't as fully fleshed out then as it is now. I've learned a lot over the past 15 plus years of teaching this exam. But when I really slowed down and analyzed what I was doing, rather than just looking to churn through every exam ever released up to that point, that's when I really started making those gains. Because we talked a little bit about pattern recognition earlier, and I think that's really key on this exam. And it's not only about pattern recognition as I described it, there's also other levels to it too, which we haven't even gotten into. One of them would be patterns in methods of reasoning. Because of course you have your classic logical fallacies, but there are also other less common methods of reasoning that come up on the LSAT. And if when you look at a new question, you can relate it back to previous ones that you've done and you're not analyzing it for the first time in that moment, then you're saving a lot of time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, understood. Perfect, thank you.
Of course, I'm glad I was able to help. But before we sign off, what would you say is the biggest insight you got from our call today?
Definitely the recognizing patterns and the method of reasoning. So like finding those words that, tripped me on the question that, just kind of confused me. So I definitely should start writing them down. So maybe missing most and missing some or those keywords. I think that'll be helpful. And it was great talking to you and just getting a different insight on how to review for the PTs.
Awesome. Well, please keep in touch and let me know if you need anything at all as you move forward.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.